This podcast is a quest for well-being, a quest for a meaningful life through the exploration of fundamental truth. Enlightening ideas, insights on physical, mental, and spiritual health. The inspiration is love. The aspiration is to awaken new ways of thinking that can lead us to a new way of being well. Welcome to Body, Mind, and Soul Healing Conversations.
Susan Keller wrote Mostly Sober, a love story and a road trip, to help readers find peace with reduced alcohol consumption, and to show them how they can moderate or even eliminate cravings for alcohol. Reduced cravings lead to a lot less drinking and improved health for our minds and bodies. Mostly Sober takes place in 1983. This was a time when there was little help available to the person who wanted to change their drinking. It was AA or not much else. But not all of us who drink are candidates for AA. We can learn to drink moderately or minimally. Today, there's a lot of help to do that. Susan's intention is that readers find common ground with her protagonist and her journey to accept herself, resolve her own misplaced guilt, and understand that the trauma she experienced as a child was not her fault. Valeria interviews Susan Keller. She is the author of Mostly Sober, a love story and a road trip, and Blood Brother, a memoir. After earning a degree in public health and immunology, Susan enjoyed a 30-year career as an award-winning medical writer. Additionally, her poetry won prizes in regional and national contests. This background in science and poetry gives her writing credibility as well as lyricism. Susan's experience overcoming a rare and frequently fatal lymphoma inspired her to write Blood Brother, a memoir. The subhead, Johnny's bone marrow could save my life, but he'd vanished 30 years ago. Her second book, Mostly Sober, a love story and a road trip, is a genre blend of romance and self-help. It is a deeply human narrative centered around the sober curious movement, and will help and resonate with the millions of Americans determined to moderate or minimize alcohol consumption. Susan lives in the Bay Area with her husband, Daniel. She and Daniel have both reduced their alcohol consumption from 60 drinks a month to 6 or 8. Her mission is to help all of her readers find peace and improved physical and mental health with reduced alcohol consumption. Meet Susan at susankeller.com. Here's the interview with Susan Keller.
In your own words, who is Susan Keller?
Thank you, Valeria. I'm delighted to be here. My name is Susan Keller. I live in Northern California with my husband of 41 years. My career was in healthcare education, where I spent quite a few years, decades even, writing articles for medical journals. And I also created content for a nationwide speakers bureau for physicians and other providers. So I was really, the healthcare education field was very, it was primary for me. I am now retired, but I'm still working full-time as a writer. And I wrote both of my books, Mostly Sober, a love story and a road trip, and Blood Brother, a memoir, to provide hope to people who are facing dismal or even dire situations. And I also love to write.
Yes. So one of the themes is peace. That really caught my attention. It was something that I gravitated towards too. So this idea that we can go through painful situations in life and suffering and still find peace. So I would love for you, before we even talk about more about the book and all the other questions I have here, How would you define that state of mind? What is to be peaceful to you?
Well, for myself and my protagonist, finding peace has meant being released from a lot of negative self-talk, from past trauma. It's being released from cravings. In my case, not significant cravings, but daily cravings for a glass or two of wine. So when you don't have those cravings, when you're not telling yourself that you're stupid or incomplete or you're lacking, that's very peaceful. And it's a wonderful frame of mind. And that is something I'm really hoping that I will communicate to my readers, and that they will find a way to find that kind of peace as well.
Yes, that really resonates with me as well. This idea that we can kind of make conscious choices in a sense of coming from freedom. So we are not really kind of directed to do the same thing over and over again, but we are able to become more spontaneous. And the way I see it, it's almost like this metaphor of dancing with life. Meeting life the way it comes to us. So when it comes to addiction, how do you make a distinction between addiction and an unhealthy habit? Are they one and the same, these two concepts, or somehow different?
My father was an alcoholic, and we don't use that term anymore. We now talk about alcohol use disorder. But back in the day, when my dad was alive, he's been gone quite a while, he was an alcoholic. I asked him once, I said, "Dad, aren't you always hungover?" And he said, "No, I'm never hungover. I'm never sober." And he said, "I would start drinking at 5 a.m, and I would finish drinking at midnight. And then the same thing would happen again and again and again and again." I mean, that is a level of addiction that is rarely seen. I mean, he had a quart of milk next to him in the car, and most of that was gin, or maybe all of it was gin. There is a very big distinction between that physiological addiction and a psychological habit. Physiological addiction can also be changed, but not in the way that I did it, and not in the way that I am recommending in my book. People who have that physiological addiction, they need medications, they need AA, they need, inpatient treatment. That is not what my book offers readers. And there are so many people in the United States who I've read over 40%, who want to minimize their drinking. They want to moderate it. They don't necessarily want to stop drinking. It isn't all about being just a total sober person, but they want to moderate, and there are a lot of ways to do that.
Yes, which is wonderful what you're doing. That's creating awareness and giving tools to people who are open to it, because we need to be open too, right, Susan? There's something about the willingness to heal. Not everyone are open to it. Not yet. I think at some point we are kind of will get to that understanding that life is so much better if we are aware of our own mind and body, and in a sense we are in control of it. Although I don't use the word control that much, but it's in a sense of managing, the body, mind.
And we're not fighting it. We're not fighting our mind.
Yes.
We're not fighting our thoughts. It's wonderful to just be able to create a new habit, to feel the benefit of it, and it does provide peace and joy. And in this case of minimizing alcohol, it provides a much healthier body and brain.
Right. Yes, yeah. Yes, a billion times to that. I don't drink. I never did really, so I cannot relate directly to the experience.
Mm-hmm.
But I have seen people around me. My father too. I remember he was always drinking. Um, but going back to what you said, so the root cause of the psychological habit of drinking could be, you mentioned trauma. That's one of the reasons.
Mm-hmm.
What would be the cause of physiological addiction to alcohol? Do you have an idea?
That's an interesting question because the current knowledge is that there is not a gene for addiction. I am not a scientist. I don't know. And, I have to say, I have seen addiction in my family, even on both sides. But I don't know what causes addiction in some people and not in others. My father also smoked 2 packs of cigarettes a day until he had a major heart attack and they were pulled out of his grip. But, I don't know the answer to that, except that I believe that the gene, if there is one for addiction, it hasn't been identified. And habits are easy to slip into, very easy to slip into.
Yes. So that's why we need tools and healthy practices in place. Oh, I can't
Yes.
wait to get that. So I wanted to ask you these questions. Your routine, what is the best? I know this is in the book, everything. We don't want to disclose everything here, but I would love to hear some tips from you in a moment. Before that, I would love for you to talk to me for a moment about your love of writing and
Mm,
poetry. There's something about, I love poetry. It just tells the truth in a way that almost the soul understands. It can easily absorb and then just kind of embrace itself with it. Music,
yes.
right? There's a lot of poetry music too. So, talk to me about your love for writing in general.
Yes, I did love writing this book. And I'm hopeful that through poetic descriptions and metaphor, that my readers will enter the book and will find it relative to their lives and benefit from it. So, as an author, I hope that my book will entertain and move readers. I love to write poetic descriptions of place, and I'm hoping that readers will be pulled into the story through those. I also love metaphor. I love writing metaphor. And in my book, there is a plant, a bougainvillea, which is a plant I love, and it's used as a metaphor in my book. And as a girl, my main character, her name is Annie, she lived in a house that had crimson bougainvillea growing all along the backyard fence. It was like a scarlet sunset. It was just magnificent. Um, but her brother Hal, who was raised in the same house, is younger and is the favored child. He had an easy childhood, and Annie's childhood was much more like survival. She had a very hard time based on abandonment by her father and psychological abuse by her mother. Anyway, as a young adult, Hal bought his mother a really stunning painting of Bougainvillea, and it was a nod to his cherished memories of childhood. And when Annie saw the painting, it just brought back memories of pain. But through her journey in the book, she is able to accept the past and find peace where there was heartbreak. And at the book's end, she buys bougainvillea that she plants in her backyard. And she now looks at it with gratitude for how much she's learned and changed, for how much the pain is gone. And I love metaphor like that, and that's where I, as a writer, I have a lot of fun.
I,
I hope it will be appreciated by those with a literary, bent. So
mhm.
anyway,
Yes, yes. What's not to love about that? Yes. There's
Mhm.
something about reading something that can touch us, sometimes psychologically or soulfully, emotionally. It's just something happens. It's almost like it transports us into a new way of seeing life, a new reality, a new perspective. And change really happens within that realm, I truly believe, when we are able to see life from a different point of view, a different perspective.
Yes, I agree. I really agree. And as a writer who I want to produce books that help people, it's very important to me. And I've written two now that I think do. And if a reader can become engaged and take a deep dive, then I think that makes me so happy.
Mm,
As a writer, that makes me so happy.
yes, yeah, that's the connection, right, Susan, you're making with others.
It's the connection, that's right.
I love that. One of the questions that you I used to ask all the time. I probably asked about 800 people, perhaps 1,000 people. What's the purpose of life? That was one of my first questions to everyone. And I would get the answer over and over again. That is to connect with others, to help others somehow. And that's a confirmation, isn't it? That we are here, that everything's connected, and we are here to help one another in our own way, of course.
I totally agree with that. And I have told the story of my protagonist Annie in a way that in the beginning, when she's depressed, she sees her doctor. Her doctor recommends volunteering. She goes and she does a volunteer beach cleanup. At one point on the road trip section of the book, she goes to the scene of an accident and helps. She also helps an old man who fell into a ditch. She pulls him out. And so there's a lot of, and there's a couple more as well, but I won't get into all of them. She's there to help others and herself. I mean, that's not selfish. If we're being our best, we can be our best to other people. And for me, life is about connection, but it's about a a kindness connection.
Mm,
And I
mm,
think that is so important. So important.
I love that you said that. Yeah, kindness
Mm.
connection, not just a kind of connection. Yeah, that's an interesting way of using words, right? You just kind of paused me here in contemplation of that. Yeah, kindness connection. That's one of my values, kindness. Of course, truth and kindness. I kind of dance with them. I need to be truthful, but I also need to be kind. So it's true and kind at the same time. And doesn't always work with some people, but I think what you said is absolutely true to me. We need to be true to ourselves first. I don't think we can start the other way around. Although
Yeah.
I have asked that question here too, and I have uh, we kind of some people, mother, I think she said to me that it is possible to love others and then learn to love ourselves from that as almost as a byproduct of loving others that will return to us. I think she was the only person who said that. So I don't
Mm.
know. I'm very open to new perspectives and new, ways of seeing and being and living life. But yeah, the message of knowing oneself and healing oneself and being kind to oneself, loving oneself, it's always that has been established as a priority in a way. So I love what you said. I even put in my note, you'll love this. You said, my intention with the book is that readers find common ground with my protagonist, Annie, in her journey to accept herself, resolve her own misplaced guilt, and understand that the trauma she experienced it as a child was not her fault. So That's a powerful message in itself. So understanding that trauma is not our fault, because most people take that throughout life, right, Susan? We make whatever happened to us our own doing, and that's not really
Yes,
so.
right. And I mean, I think children are particularly prone to this. There's a very strong connection between my experience and my protagonist's experience, in that uh, her father was an alcoholic, my father was an alcoholic, my mother divorced my father, same in the book. And the father immediately married another woman who had a little girl, and Annie was replaced. I was replaced. And it was a heartbreak for me that I never, not, I don't want to say never got over, but it took a long time. And like Annie, I was just always trying to be my best. And I'm gonna go to medical school, and I'm gonna work myself just to the bone here, because I thought that that was the thing that would gain the love and respect of my father. And I don't know that it did, but it got me to where I was in my career, which was very good. And it set me up for a good life.
Mm. Yes. So, some say that everything happens for a reason. I think everything, we can turn suffering into meaning. That's something that we definitely have that option. But I don't know if everything happens for a reason. I don't know. I'm contemplating this idea, and now I don't know if that sounds true to me. Does it resonate with you, the idea of everything has a reason to be?
Well, perhaps the long view would help us, or encourage us to believe that. When I got cancer, I wasn't thinking that, oh, well, great, now I'm going to write a memoir. But a few years later, I saw that this experience, in which I was not supposed to survive, really was an opening for me to start this writing career, this writing passion that I love. So I can't say that everything happens for a reason, but I will say that that had a reason. That had an outcome I was not expecting. And my book, the first book, Blood Brother, a Memoir, has helped so many people. I have heard that back from so many people. And that's just wonderful for a writer. It's just
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yes, I admire and I appreciate and I thank you for being open to this extent of sharing yourself with humanity, with us, because that's the way also we connect and that's the way we learn. I see that a lot of people resonate with stories, experiences the other people go through, and then they ended up changing themselves for that reason. So in a way, we are using our own story, right, to change lives, to change our own lives and change other people's lives. That's a beautiful thing to do. Thank you so much, Susan.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I get asked this question a lot.
Yeah.
Is the book memoir or
Mm,
autobiography, or
yeah.
memoir or fiction?
Hi. Yes.
And I just have
Here.
to say, okay, to be perfectly honest, the book is a blend of fiction, autobiography, and self-help, which is kind of a strange animal in the publishing world. And I approached 50 agents thinking that, oh, this book was just going to be snapped up because there's so many people in the United States who want to moderate or minimize their drinking. Well, that didn't happen. But anyway, I'd written the road trip part of the book years ago, just I don't know why. I just wrote it. I wanted to write this. And but I didn't really have it didn't have a purpose. It didn't have an engine driving it forward. So when I started my own alcohol minimization journey, I was able to take that road trip and give it a mission and a message that was really important to me. And I deeply hope helpful to my readers in their own search, for peace and release from harmful habits.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. This is so. I will mention in a moment the book where it's available, but I'll leave that actually on the podcast notes as well.
Perfect.
So yeah, we'll update that later. Yes. So that's another thing that kind of interested me in the topic of mostly sober. So it's not really the extreme path of becoming completely. So it's not really trying to avoid something that we believe it's hurting us, but creating this balance. That's what your message is really about. So we don't
Mm-hmm.
need to let go of certain things, but if we are able to create balance and with it.
Well, that's exactly right. Yes. I mean, balance, acceptance, knowing that you are doing something good for your body, your mind, your spirit, all of that is just critically important to the person who really feels they want to do this. There are people who probably should do this and may not want to. But at the same time, there is just this wonderful community out there of organizations, books, podcasters, communities, apps, so much available to help people who want to reduce their consumption for purposes of their health and their spiritual life. And it's community is just, once again, community is critical in this pursuit. It really is.
Yes,
And when
yes,
you go into these communities and you hear other people's stories and you can communicate with them and tell your story and see how they are progressing, it's really vital.
yes. It has this powerful message, or brings to us the understanding that we are not the only ones going through certain things, that
Yes.
it's actually everyone is going through something.
Yes.
And a lot of times it's very similar to what we are going through.
Mhm.
So again, makes that connection, which is highly healing. So community support, yes, that's something that really also resonated with me incredibly. And I know at the end of the book, there's a section in your book that the resources, right,
Mhm.
section that
Yeah.
you list there, where they can find help. So I think and you mentioned the communities, which ones that they can look for. And I think you also mentioned the podcast. I don't
Mhm.
have his name here, but
Oh, Andrew
oh, yeah.
Huberman.
Yes,
Andrew
yes.
Huberman, 16, 17 months ago, I joined a group it's called Sober Sis, and it's quite big, and I think it's helped a lot of people. Online community, although I think they do meet in person, but it's somewhere in Texas or something, and I'm in Northern California. Anyway, I joined this community and got connected with a group of women, and we would go and do Marco Polo chats. And they were so interesting because all different ages, all different, professions, etc. And none of them wanted to stop drinking. They all wanted to
Yes.
cut down. And I said, me too. And then one
Mhm.
of them mentioned this gentleman, Andrew Huberman. He is a professor and neurobiologist at Stanford, which is where my life was saved with the bone marrow transplant. So I feel a connection already. But he has a podcast, and he goes through many, many health related issues. He doesn't concentrate on alcohol at all, but he had one podcast, which is almost exactly 2 years ago. It was late August 2020, 2022. And I listened to it and I was really moved. And then my husband I listened to it, and he was the same. Both of us were just, okay, we have to make a change. We were convinced something had to change. And, Valeria, we were never just heavy, heavy drinkers. We never were. I mean, we'd have a glass of wine at night, or two, and but we did it every night. And so, that is shown to be really harmful by most of the major medical associations today. There's a lot of science to support that. So we listened to that podcast by Andrew Huberman, and it was the starting block for our journey. It was really remarkable, and of course that is mentioned. His work is mentioned in my resources section.
Yes, so that's really wonderful to know as well.
Yeah.
Yes, this is the power of communication, right? These tools, the media that we have today, podcasts, I love them, and that's why I host this one. Talk to me for a moment about the unhealthy impact of drinking too much. I think that will be interesting for people to know specifically what are the harmful effects, Susan, that you're aware of?
Well, there's a few that are really common, unfortunately. One is breast cancer. And, as you know, I've already had cancer, not breast cancer, lymphoma. Both my mother and my aunt have had breast cancer. So it's right there in my family. Other harmful outcomes are dementia, other types of cancers. What else? Cardiac problems, stroke, heart attack, all those sorts of things. There's a litany of issues that are, terrible outcomes health-wise, and in terms of your mind, that is just not a good idea. And this has happened quite recently. When I was younger, and my husband and I were both commuting into San Francisco. We had stressful jobs. We were raising a child. We were running a household. And every night we would come home and have a glass or two of wine every night. And we just thought, oh, this is probably good for us. Red wine is good for the heart, et cetera, et cetera. But in the last couple of years, this has been proven to be not the case. That drinking wine on an everyday basis is dangerous. And now, to be honest, I'm in my 70s. I just had a birthday, and I worry about the mental thing as much as the physical, because you don't want to lose the acuity that you've got. You don't want to lose your skills in dealing with everyday life. And I have two beautiful grandsons, little guys, 6 and 9, and my daughter and I are really close, and we're really close to her husband. And I want to be around for those people I love so much.
Yes, I love to hear that. That's beautiful. I think you're doing incredibly well for yourself. Yeah, by taking good care of yourself, loving yourself, and just dancing that dance, but also passing that on to others as a mission, having that sense of purpose. It's just everything. It's really beautiful. Thank you so much again, Susan. I have to say that again.
Thank you.
Here. Yeah, what's not to admire about that? Another question that I know I did. I'm not linear in any way. I know I had the guided questions here, but we are going back and forth, so I apologize for that.
That's okay. It's wonderful.
I'm not good at following anything like in a perfect order. So I think we mentioned we already covered the drinking story. So that's how it started. And I know you mentioned that it has its roots in trauma, right? This is it relates to trauma. I want to go back to something that I read about the rabbi that you met.
Yes.
I would love to hear about that, the spiritual connection,
Yeah.
and how he helped you.
Well, that is a completely fictional addition,
Yeah.
okay? I
Okay.
didn't
Yes.
really meet a rabbi with a rosary, but I thought, oh, I
Yeah.
like this
That
character.
sounds good. Yeah.
He's
Me
great. He's
too.
really great. And
Me too.
Annie, the protagonist, she and Benjamin, the rabbi with the rosary, had a real meeting of the minds on this plane trip from San Francisco to Palm Springs. And, he opened up a lot to her. And he became a spiritual guide for her. And he reappears several times throughout the book. And it's just beautiful because he knew what it was like to live in a traumatic environment as a child. And he could really relate to her and let her know this was not her fault. She was blaming the wrong person. Not that you should blame anyone, because we all have to realize that people are having their own challenges and they may be very unhappy for good reasons, and not that it's our fault, but maybe it's not theirs either. I mean, that's a different discussion, of course. But anyway, yeah, Benjamin, he and Annie meet up, and he's a beautiful, guiding light for her.
Yeah. Yeah. That interested me. I know that's the fiction part of it. You see, there's something about guidance, especially spiritual guidance. It it's well, it sounds psychological, but it's beyond psychology. It's almost it goes back, Susan, to this innate wisdom, natural wisdom that we are already what we are looking for. There's
Mm,
something about that feeling of completeness, of wholeness, that this is it. So I don't need anything to add to this experience or even to remove anything. It's absolutely fine the way it is. It's beautiful the way it is. And
mhm.
being at peace with it. So that's my guide really. I'm always returning to that understanding. And it sounds the idea, the word is spiritual, the concept, but I don't know. I think it's just natural when we reconnect with the part of ourselves that feels whole. It really does. Of course, I had practiced meditation for many years, so it's easy to go back to that place all the time. But um, that's what I wish for most humans, for most of us, to just return to it. We see right, we see that with flowers. They just are. They're so beautiful, but they're not trying to. There's something about just being themselves
Yeah.
and letting it be, right? Not trying. Yeah, it's just I don't know. That's another metaphor. I know you like metaphors. I love them too.
And there are another metaphor in the book about Bell Story roses. And the Bell Story roses become a link for the protagonist to reconnect with her mother and for them to forgive and for them to express love. And they go through the whole book. And I have to say that
Yeah.
my daughter sent me a gorgeous bouquet of roses, very much like the Bell stories in the book. And that was such a treat.
Yes, yes, I can imagine. Gosh, there's something about flowers. I
Mhm.
remember this monk. You probably heard about him, Thich Nhat Hanh. He's no longer in the body, but he used to meditate with flowers, and he would suggest that we do that too. Always look at a flower and meditate with it. So this is another topic, meditation. But going back to the topic of your book, so mostly sober, a love story, and a road trip. So another interesting idea here is the special occasions. So you said special occasions are important to define because some people say, "Well, I only drink in special occasions." So
Yeah.
talk to me about that. That
Yes,
seems
this
interesting.
is a really important point in determining how you as an individual are going to move forward with your own change. And for me, of course, I wanted to get rid of the everyday drinking. So what does that mean? That means that, well, you have to ask the question, well, when will I drink? Okay. All right. I'm going to drink on perhaps a birthday, a holiday. Maybe my husband and I golf a little. We're not good, but we're enthusiastic. And we might have a glass of wine with our friends on the 19th hole. That's all fine. But we cannot say, oh, gee, it's Friday. I need to have a drink. No, 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 no. That is a slippery slope. You say, oh my gosh, I'm really stressed or something. That is not enough for us anyway. I mean, I don't know, maybe it works for other people, but I say you've got to ask yourself, how will you define special occasions? And I mean, to be funny for a minute, have you donated those Goodwill bags? Have you fertilized the house plants? Organized your tax deductible receipts? You just have to decide. But I will tell you, that my husband and I just got back from a 9-day trip to Alaska. We'd never been there. And I really want so much to see the natural world. I want to be in the natural world. That's what I really want more than anything. And so we chose Alaska. And we got on this train that was going through the wilderness and all this. And they had a bar right there in our car. And I looked at the drink menu, and there was a drink called Moose Kiss. And I said, oh, I have to have that drink, Moose Kiss. And we drank on our vacation. We'd have a glass or two of wine at night. That was all. Nothing big, but I did have to have the Moose Kiss. But we came home and immediately got back into our routine. And it's, once you have people in this, community of alcohol minimization or moderation, they talk about changes in the neural pathways, changes in our brain. And it was very easy for my husband and I just to go back to, oh, I don't need a drink tonight, whereas we were able to have a celebratory vacation, and then we were able to cut it off. So, that's what's working for us. And I also have to say that I think it helped me that I have my husband joining me. And again, back to connection, back to support. If you have a partner or a friend, a family member perhaps, who will go on this journey with you, it might be easier. I'm not sure. It might be. The communities out there are great, and they will help. But, for the every night.
Yes, that's something that I would definitely agree with that. Yeah, having somebody with you, like your partner, if they can join. Yes, and I see that it's easier. So habits, there are something that something become a habit because we are doing, kind of practicing that activity over and over again. So it established that connection, right, Susan, in the brain. So now it's easier for the brain to just go back to what it has
Yes,
been doing.
exactly.
So the changing. So it seems like all it takes really is commitment, isn't it? Is that it's that decision, kind of making that choice. And some people talk about will, and some people, they do need AA because they have to
Mhm.
stop altogether because they don't have the. I think also they call it self control. I think that's another term, isn't it? They can't really control.
Well, also, I have to go back to the difference between a psychological habit and a
Mm,
physiological addiction.
yeah.
That's key. It really is. And if a person like my father, who drank a fifth of gin a day for decades, if that's the level of drinking, then that person is going to need more than just
Mm,
the communities and
yeah.
podcasts and books that are out there right now.
Yes. So I think they had interviewed somebody recently, and that was opioids. Yeah. what he did, the intervention, it was clinical though. They had to be hospitalized for a while, and then they did some sort of. He explained the whole process, through the veins. It's almost like cleaning at the cell level. It was like a cellular level type of intervention. So yeah, that sounded very physiological, and he said that. That kind of addiction was not psychological. He explained that really well.
And there are drugs that will help the person who is physiologically addicted. There are drugs. Naltrexone, I believe, is one of the most popular. That again, if you need that, it's suggested that you take that route. But if you can do it without, which I was fortunate enough, to be able to just, stop on my own, with help, of course, but not. I didn't need a medical intervention.
Right, right. So in that case, you call it psychological habit.
Exactly.
So
Yes.
that's fascinating too, Susan, because it is believed, especially in the mind-body community, that body-mind is connected. So anything that affects the body affects the mind, and vice versa. But it seems to me like um, the body might have a strong hold, in a sense, a more. It seems like it's easy to be controlled by the body's wants, right, and desires than the mind. That's interesting to contemplate. I never thought of that way. Um, Another thing that caught my attention too, something that I never heard before. It's a non-alcoholic wine.
Haha, yes.
This is something that you added. So I'd love to hear that from you, because we
Okay.
drink wine here and there, but there's alcohol in it.
Sure, sure. Well, again, this market is absolutely booming. The non-alcoholic, beer, wine, spirits. It's just growing by leaps and bounds. That has become part of my routine, and I drink a non-alcoholic Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand, which I quite enjoy. And in the evenings, I have this gorgeous, tall, dark blue wine glass. Oh, it's so pretty. Long stem. It's beautiful. And I pour that wine in there, and it's this become my ritual. I'm not looking for that buzz of dopamine, which I don't have much of that anyway. I don't respond that way, but I have this moment of calm, and sometimes alcohol. I think frequently alcohol is a transitional period from the day to the evening, and what I've done is created this ritual that is a transition from day to evening, but it's not alcoholic. It's just pleasure. It's just wonderful. And the other thing, another little routine, includes a month at a glance calendar, which I keep on my desk. I've been using these for decades. And every night that I don't drink, I write dry in red marker. And I can tell you, as a visual person, I get so excited when I see a month full of dry in red.
Yes,
And it
yes.
just gives me a lift. It gives me a sense of accomplishment. So I have these little tricks, whatever you want to call them.
Yes, I love them. So that what comes to me into mind is the idea of self-trust. So you have established this concept of self-trust, to trust yourself, to follow whatever routine or ritual that you have in place. So so you're creating your own experience, and you see the word control. It doesn't really resonate with me, but for the lack of a better one, I'm wondering if we can use a different word. I don't like the idea of controlling anything, but it's managing, or I like dancing better. But there's something about trusting ourselves that is it's just a wonderful idea.
that is integrated into this whole process of reducing alcohol consumption, in that, there will be some discomfort. People who are
Yeah.
used to having this little buzz at the end of the night, or kind of calm, relaxed, whatever, when they stop doing that, that can create discomfort. I cannot, say that it won't. But the longer that you put up with that, the more days you say, okay, all right, okay, I'm not going to have it tonight, I'm not going to have it, the less that you feel that way. And you do begin to trust yourself more and more, that I can do this. I can do it. It's not the easiest thing I've ever done, but by gosh, I'm going to do it, And it does become easier with time. It really does.
Yes. So it is the commitment and then practice. We need
Yes.
to
Yes.
kind of be true to the practice. And that's also in spirituality. It always goes back to practice. Every
Yes.
day we practice something. Thank you so much, Susan, again, for your work, for your message, for your beautiful mission, and this sense of purpose that
Thank
I
you.
can feel here in you. And of course, we all will be we are touched by it in a beautiful way, in a sense of growth and evolution. I have heard a lot this idea of the evolution of humans. What is to be a human being? And the more I contemplate the idea and talk to so many people, we come we kind of agree that it's becoming fully human in the sense of accepting everything that comes with the experience, and also fully divine. So knowing that we are also something that transcends the experience, we are both the mind, body, and the spirit, which in my case, I would say that we are spirits, of course, having the dream of being humans, not even the experience, but dreaming the dream of that. So, with that said, hopefully I got through all the guided questions, but I think that there is one here. We're almost at the end. There was one that I didn't. I'm not sure if you went through the entire. Oh yeah, the snapshot of mostly sober.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that
Sure.
would be wonderful to end like with that, Susan.
Okay. Yes. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to go through this. I'm going to go through this quickly. Drinking too much is the result of trauma for my protagonist, Annie Marks. She especially needed the love of her father. And when she was 12, I've gone over some of this, excuse me, but when she was 12, her mother divorced her alcoholic father, who immediately remarried and adopted his second wife's daughter. Annie never quite healed from that trauma, and her need for love just makes her work harder and harder. And she's stressed from trying to be perfect. She suffered years of negative self-talk, depression, and a stubborn drinking habit. The book opens in 1983. Annie is 27 years old and has taken a leave from medical school to waitress, make money, and pay down her crushing student debt because her parents had never helped her financially. She gets involved with a man too old for her and too much of a drinker, and this really disturbs her because she feels the direction her life is taking is hazardous.
Right.
So she talks to her doctor, who diagnoses depression, prescribes antidepressants, and recommends volunteer work. So she volunteers on a beach for a beach cleanup and meets Dean, this sexy, funny, smart fireman whose only noticeable vice is cheesecake. They fall in love. And this part of the book was so much fun to write because
Yeah, I can
it was
imagine.
just really fun. It's clean romance. Okay, it's not anything graphic by any
Right.
means, but she desperately wants to accept Dean's proposal of marriage, but she has an affair with alcohol that he doesn't know about, and this really bothers her. So she worries that she may not be the woman Dean thinks he proposed to. So she asks for more time, and he is not happy. He's hurt and he's angry. And the morning after the proposal, Annie gets a call from her estranged mother, Barbara. And Barbara pleads with Annie to drive her and Ray, Barbara's second husband, who must receive electroconvulsive therapy for clinical depression, and their tranquilized cat, Marco, from the Mojave Desert to the Bay Area so Ray can get this help he needs. And Annie drops into the med school library. She researches behavior modification and begins her own journey towards drinking less. She knows she has to do this, not only to accept Dean's proposal, but to, succeed in medical school. So it's the plane ride from San Francisco to Palm Springs where she meets Benjamin, the rabbi with a rosary. And the phone call from Barbara initiates a grueling 4-day road trip. And anybody who's ever driven from Palm Springs to the Bay Area knows that it does not take 4 days. But it does in this case because so much goes on. It's an arduous journey, and they encounter a lot of memorable characters who bring Annie and Barbara closer together and illuminate the challenges Annie is facing regarding her own drinking habit. So after the road trip, Annie tells Dean about how she has significantly reduced her drinking. There's a lot more going on in the final chapters, but I can't give all that away. It's too much to give away.
Right. Then that's, yeah. So the book it's available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and Book Baby. And I'll have the links on the podcast notes.
Thank you.
All of them will be here.
Thank you.
Then also I want to mention your website, susankeller.com. So that'll be in the podcast notes too, in a clickable way.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you again for everything that you represent, which to me has to do with healing, leading us to this state of freedom, which I call peace, the dance with life as it is, the acceptance of this as it comes. So it's a profound message, and it's not just in your books. I see you as a living message.
Thank you.
It's beyond even writing. I know that you love writing, and we love your writing, but you are the representation of the message. You are the message itself. So that's so amazingly beautiful. That's like a flower to me.
Oh,
so
well, Valeria,
thank you so much, Susan.
You are the one who deserves those accolades. Thank you. You do tremendous work in the world.
Oh my God, I love doing this. Yeah, I always say that, it's the word love, it comes to me like immediately. It's the love for connection, deep conversations. I can't have small conversations. That's why. That's the secret, really. I'm really bad at it. So before we say goodbye for today, Susan, I'll ask you another question, the ending question, if you don't mind. So that will close our conversation for today. What 3 experiences you wish everyone to have before they lose the body, before they die?
My most profoundly joyful experience is being a mother, a grandma, a wife to my husband, who, over 41 years of marriage now. There's just no substitute for that family bond. And that's, for me, number 1. Number 2 would be to help other people through the work that I've done. And I'm so grateful that I've been able to write these books. I've got another one in the back of my mind that I won't get into, but that's the third one I'm thinking about. And again, I want to bring understanding and light and grace, to the people's stories that I write about. And I guess number 3 would be kindness to others. Honestly, it just makes such a difference in my day-to-day life. Do we have time for me to share a very short
Yes.
snippet? Okay.
Yes, please.
Yesterday, I went down to our little local market and I bought something for dinner. And I was driving home and I got to the intersection where I was going to turn right. And the light turned green and the car in front of me turned right. And there was a gentleman in the crosswalk coming towards me. And I thought, I'm going to stop for this man. I'm not going to, and I was not going to cut him off at all. I mean, I still had a long way between him and me, but I just let him go by and he smiled and waved at me and
Mm,
I did that back. And
mm,
gosh, that made me feel good. It was so small, but I felt really nice about it. And I think he did too.
yes. Yes. Yes, a billion times. So to that, you see, you said the word grace, and I think that's what the representation of that is, right? When we are kind to ourselves and others, then it feels so graceful.
Mm.
Which I also connect to the word gratitude, in a sense of being grateful to be here. So we are
Yes.
just in love with life.
Yes.
Why not? Thank you so much again, Susan,
Thank you.
for your message, and for everything that you represent. Thank you. And we'll be in touch again. Take good care of your beautiful self for now.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Valeria.
Thank you, Susan. Bye for
Bye-bye.
now. Bye.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about Susan Keller and her work, please visit susankeller.com.
To learn more about this podcast, please visit fitforjoy.org/podcast. Thank you again for listening, and bye for now.